Welcome to the Businesses Start Here podcast, hosted by David Vigliotti and Vigliotti and Associates. We're here to talk with business owners and business experts to inspire and encourage entrepreneurs.
Hello and welcome to the Businesses Start Here podcast. We're back with another episode. We have someone that I used to take baths with when I was little. Known him my whole life. It's my cousin. Of course, he's family. Jeff Schmidt, founder of Lango. Jeff, I'm excited to have you here today and can't wait to learn something new about you that I didn't learn in the past 37 years. So welcome to the podcast, Jeff.
Thanks so much. Yeah, what an intro. I wasn't expecting that, but it's every part is true. So happy to be here.
I had so many different intros I could have lined up. Most of them embarrassing, some that we probably shouldn't talk about. I was thinking this morning, most of the stuff I've done that I shouldn't have done in my life involved you somehow. So.
Well, hey, that's what I'm here for. You know, if nothing else, I'll show you how to make whether it's poor decisions or just decisions you might not otherwise make. So
exactly, it's always fun.
Happy to help.
So that's for sure. So Jeff, you started Lango. Why don't you just give us a little bit of your background, tell us about you, and then we'll get started from there.
Yeah, so I'm actually a co-founder of Lango. Josh Forus is the original founder. He brought me in almost 2 years ago as a partner and co-founder to run sales and business development. And through the process, it's my role has kind of evolved to be more overall company leadership, strategy decisions, things like that. And so my background is in the language industry. My professional background. I started at a company called TransPerfect, which up until about 6 months ago was the largest language service company in the world. There was a recent merger which made them second largest. And then I spent the last 9 years before joining Lango at a company called We Localize and Park IP. Park IP was acquired by We Localize. So about 15 years in the industry, which I think is why Josh was interested in bringing me in as a co-founder and partner, bringing some of that industry expertise and a network of professionals that can help us to grow the business as well as kind of learn a little bit more about the inside elements of the language industry.
Yeah, that's great. So you started Lango with your co-founder, kind of start off more focused on sales, it sounds like, and now you've got a lot more under your belt. So how did that transition take place? Was it just natural as things grew, more got added to your plate? And where did you start and where are you guys now?
Yeah, it started as sales, and the goal was, so when I joined, it was Josh and one other person who kind of worked with Josh, and then he brought me in as a co-founder to do some of those sales elements. And the way it ended up evolving was that because of the sales that we were doing, we had to add some operational elements, and because we were so lean and so young. We were trying to be very, very scrappy, and we were. And a lot of that stuff fell on me. Just having had the experience and expertise in the industry and not really having any other option to get it done. It's basically you sell it and then figure out how to actually get it done. And that's kind of how my position evolved, more from just being sales to a much broader role in the firm, from operations to marketing to like leadership and strategy direction. And it's kind of like the humble beginnings, I guess. We sold a couple of little projects. We started at $0. And I leveraged some of the network that I had built over the last decade and a half in the industry, started to generate revenue, generate some business, and then we needed to actually fulfill the business, and that's the other side of what I did. So leveraging folks that I knew, project managers and translators to get the work done, and then we ended up building up a larger book of business, a larger operational element to the firm, to our company. And now we're actually focusing a lot more on our core area, which is technology platform. And we can get into maybe some of the details of that a little bit later, but that's kind of how my role in the company took shape, was sales, and then just sort of out of necessity growing into a broader scope.
Yeah, so you have 15 years experience, and one thing I like to talk a lot about with potential entrepreneurs is if you don't have experience in an industry, it's not a non-starter, but it makes it so much easier if you have that experience. So what advantages do you think you have over somebody who maybe wasn't in this field before? And I think language translation is a highly specialized field, so it might even be more. It might. I think it's probably in your industry completely necessary that you have some kind of background before you start a business like this. But what advice would you have with somebody trying to get into a new business?
Dave, it's a really pertinent topic. It's something that's actually going around in communications around the industry right now. Is, do you need to have language industry to be successful in the industry? Yeah, it's a mixed bag of responses. My personal opinion is that you don't. I think that, and this is personal. I think that no matter what you do, I think the success that you have is driven from within. It doesn't have anything to do with, or has very little to do with, the industry that you apply your own core principles and work ethic and those kinds of things that are internal too. It does certainly help to have industry knowledge, industry expertise, institutional understanding of the way that things work. But I would say that in order to have success in the language industry, you don't necessarily, depending on the role that you're in, if you want to be a translator, you have to have some specialization.
Right.
You have to know the languages, you have to kind of know what the content is that you're translating. But I think to run a successful translation company or a successful organization within the language industry, it is more about understanding how things work together and leveraging the specializations for the needs of the people that need them. And so it becomes less of knowing how to translate, a bunch of patents from English into Chinese, and more about knowing that somebody needs to translate that patent into Chinese in order to protect their intellectual property in that country, in China.
So for you, it's more as an entrepreneur, you can start the business and hire the people that you need to fill those specialized roles, even if you don't have experience in that industry. As long as you have the desire to start a business and interest in that business, um, your drive is really what's going to help you succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the core of it comes down to, the things you just mentioned: having the drive, having an interest in the area, and I think a key element is having a problem that you're solving, right? And so you don't necessarily have to know all of the specific details and ins and outs of the industry and how you're going to solve that problem exactly. You have the specialized people to come in and kind of fill those roles. But if you understand from a broad perspective what the problem is and how it needs to be solved, you can start to build out the engine to solve the problem. And I think that's, from the perspective of Lango, that's what we're doing. We addressed an issue, and
What is that issue?
the core issue is, in the industry, it's fragmented. So it's essentially a very antiquated industry. It goes way back. It goes back thousands and thousands of years, translating words and documents. The Bible's been translated, however many languages, and so it goes way back. And the problem is, now in today's world, with the globalization of all economies and companies that can reach anybody anywhere, there is a growing need for translation and language services, but it's happening at a much more rapid speed. And there's not the infrastructure in place in the industry to support that in an efficient and optimized way.
Okay.
And so these people that start companies or want to sell any of their products globally or want to reach an audience that's local that doesn't speak their language, they have to find ways to translate, localize their content. And there's not a clear path for that. There are according to some industry experts, there are over 100,000 language service companies, and there's no clear way on how to contact them, to differentiate between them, to know where to even start. And so the buyers of the industry are frustrated, confused. It's unclear how to start. It's unclear how to make sure that you're maximizing what you're doing and doing it in the best possible way. And then in addition to that, with 100,000 different suppliers or language service companies, they don't have the tools that they need to run their business in the best possible way. A lot of these companies started from single translators or a group of 2 or 3 translators that got together and said, we all do Japanese into English translation. We should kind of pool our resources and get together and focus on doing just that. Right. And their focus has been on the language. It's been on more of the art side of the business and not the business side of the business. And so it's really, it's antiquated, it's disjointed, and it's inefficient. And that's the main problem that we came in to solve and said, look, there is technology out there. There's lots of innovation in this world and in all different industries and all different verticals that is not being applied here. We can take elements of what's being done in other industries to create efficiency, to create unity, to create clarity and transparency, and apply it to the language industry and solve a lot of the problems that exist. And especially in an industry that's growing at such a rapid rate.
Right. So how are you solving that problem?
We have a platform. So the core component of what we're doing is we have a technology platform that applies to the 3 primary constituents in the industry. And that's the buyer, the supplier, and then the contracted translator that's really at the end of that supply chain. And they right now are using multiple different systems. There are all sorts of different small technologies that don't tackle the various elements, because in the language industry, there's translation, there's interpretation, there's machine translation, there's language consultation, there's sign language, there's a number of different small services. And up to this point, they've had different systems, different tools to help to supply the translators to the buyers, and they've had different ways of doing things. And what we're doing is we're bringing that all together into one unified, simple platform that all of the buyers can go to understand the suppliers and the differences between them, the similarities between them, and manage them all in one single place. The suppliers leverage the platform to run their business. So it enables them to essentially create a supply chain management tool, as well as a customer management tool, as well as a accounting and financial management tool. And then the translators that are used to working with 100,000 different language service companies are able to now manage all of their various language service customer or language service company suppliers in one uniform place. And it just creates this simple way to manage everything.
So the good thing is you're not working against, you're not replacing some of these companies you may have worked for before. You're actually supporting them and coming alongside of them and helping them. So that puts you in a great place. You have both sides working with you. And because of your industry, you knew all the people.
That's exactly right, and that's our main objective, right? When we came in to solve the problem, the goal was to not leverage the momentum that's already there and leverage the existing resources, and in no way replace them or unseat them. It was actually to enable them to do their business better. And we create what we call it like a flywheel effect, where and it's really a network effect. So the more suppliers that we work with and help to optimize their business by leveraging our platform to run their business, they're then able to reach a customer base on the buyer side through that same platform. And then the buyers are able to now reach a broader base of suppliers and manage them more efficiently through that same platform. So it really kind of, it runs itself, and it helps to create better processes and more capability on both ends.
Yeah. And that's interesting because a lot of times when you hear about disruption, which it sounds like to me, Lango is a big disruptor in this industry, but people think disruption means tearing it down. But in your
Yeah.
case, which I love, you guys are building up. You're, like you said, you're taking the momentum already there and just saying, here's a way that we can take this momentum and everybody's going to benefit from it. So I
Yeah.
love that concept of a positive disruptor, I'll call it.
Yeah, I like that term, positive disruption. I think, I mean, I'll steal that from you. I think we're family, so kind of like what's yours is mine in some way.
Exactly.
So I'll steal that concept from you. But no, I totally agree. And that was really key for me. I mean, I do, because I have friends, I have close contacts, and in my network in this industry, I did not want to come in and start creating problems, but solving problems in an effective way that essentially builds a bridge or builds a platform, rather than kind of creates smaller little pieces or breaks down parts of it. It's really building it up instead of separating it out.
So was this something you were looking for? It sounds like the co-founder came to you and asked you to join him. Have you wanted to start a business? This is something that I don't think we ever talked about. Is that something you always wanted to do, or is it something that kind of fell into your lap and you had the experience, you had the business school degree from Penn State and all that stuff, that you knew you could be successful at it and you just jumped at the opportunity?
It was serendipitous in that I had been very interested in doing something on my own. I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I had worked for larger organizations, for my whole career, and I had the itch just to kind of to do my own thing. There were a lot of things that I had trouble with, or just, I saw as a challenge in big organizations that could be done better, that it took a lot to maneuver or a lot to change inside of these organizations. And, I saw that I could do things if I had my own company, if I were able to do things on my own, that I believed that I could do them better. Maybe that's a little bit cocky or a little bit confident, but I think that you have to have a little bit of confidence in order to have the conviction to go out and be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that.
Yeah.
Say that again, David. I didn't miss you.
Back in the face. So if you don't have that confidence, you're just gonna quit. Really.
Yeah. You're gonna quit, and that's part of it, right? It's not just confidence. It's you have to have that drive to continue in the face of challenges and adversity, to believe in what you're doing and believe in yourself that you can do it, so that you can overcome those challenges and at the end persevere in your end goal. For me, it was actually, like I said, it was pretty serendipitous in that I had been thinking about what I would do and what kind of company I would start, and I had a concept that I had been mapping out. I had documentation, and I was starting to build a business plan around a company that would help to bring more information to the buyer side, to help buyers create or enable them to make better informed decisions about buying translation and language services. And at the same time, Josh was building a company that leveraged technology to enable the industry to work more optimally and more efficiently together. And we just happened to find ourselves again through a network. Somebody I used to work with was in Los Angeles. Josh was in Los Angeles. They met each other randomly at a networking event. The person that I knew connected me with Josh, and we just kind of hit it off, and really our two ideas were very similar, kind of two sides of the same coin, and we brought those to bear and started Lango. But I say that all. I mean, people talk about luck. I mean, luck is something. I don't necessarily believe in luck itself. I think, I call it serendipitous, in that the things that had been done previously led to that chance interaction. And it's not really that much of a chance, because we both, Josh and I, and this person, this intermediary, Pete, is a great person, helped to get us into that position. But, if Josh wasn't actively leveraging a network in Los Angeles, and I wasn't actively leveraging and communicating with my network in the language industry, we wouldn't have made the connection.
Yeah. I have a high school basketball coach that he said this all the time: the harder I work, the luckier I get. So I think
Yeah.
like you said, there is luck involved, but you have to be ready to take advantage of that luck. So
exactly.
Yeah,
and you have to recognize when the opportunity exists. I mean, I feel like half of luck is seeing that there's an opportunity and knowing that you're prepared to handle it. I mean, it's that old. I generally refrain from using sort of outdated or beaten down terms of phrase, but which they say luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe it. I do. I think there's probably a cooler way to say it, but I can't think of one.
I think another thing
I believe that
that I like is life either happens. You either have the viewpoint that life happens to you, or life happens for you. So when you see an opportunity, if you think life happens to you, you're going to see all the negatives. But if you think it's happening for you, you're going to see the positives. You're going to go after it. Even like COVID, like how many people became millionaires in COVID because they saw an opportunity and seized upon it, and they may not have even been ready at that point, but they saw it. They they were prepared for it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
They will take advantage of it, and now they started a business or what. So yeah, I think it's more about your mindset than it is about anything else.
I 100% agree. 100%. I think it might have actually been that same basketball coach that said, your attitude determines your altitude. But I agree with that too. I mean, it is about your mindset. If you're not prepared to capitalize on an opportunity, if you're not in the right mindset to achieve something great or to work towards achieving something great, then you never will.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of switching gears a little bit, what was the scariest thing about starting a business? Like, did you have a conversation with your wife and say, "Hey, I'm leaving my job tomorrow, and we're starting this business with $0 revenue"? And I know she's a teacher, so you're living on a school teacher's salary for a little bit. I know you had some savings, but how did that process go of making that decision to take the leap?
Yeah. It was it was a challenging conversation, but at the same time it wasn't. I mean, Kelly, and she's amazing. And I'm lucky for that. I was frustrated in my old role. I was fortunate that I was successful. I mean, I think I created a lot of that success, but I was in a position from other people to have been successful. And, leaving a good paying job while living in Manhattan, which is not cheap, and having a wife who teaches at a Catholic school, doesn't pay a whole lot. It was scary. And not only that, she was pregnant with our, who's now 18 months, Arrow. So we had he was, I guess, two at the time, 2.5, and a baby who was ready to pop in about 3 months. And we kind of talked to, and a dog and a cat, all living in our massive Manhattan apartment now. It's a 1 bedroom that we converted into 2 bedrooms. So, we kind of took it all in and we said, where are we? Where are we financially? Where are we personally? And from a family objective perspective, and where do we want to be? And we had some long-term goals. I mean, we eventually wanted to buy a house. We wanted to have financial freedom. We wanted to have time freedom. And so we talked that over and we said, well, if we continue down this path, what is my happiness level, and how does that translate to the happiness of the rest of the family? And are we going to be happy if we don't capitalize on this opportunity? Are we going to look back and regret what we didn't do? And then we said, okay, what is the big risk? I mean, what's the real financial risk? And then what's the big risk? What if it all fails? What if we hedge a bet on this opportunity and it just completely collapses? What can we do? And then how long can we stand to not really make much money? And we kind of weighed those things together and we said, let's do it. And Kelly was completely supportive. And she still is. And I mean, she's downstairs right now taking care of the kids and getting them ready while I'm up here, talking to you. And we're actually on a family vacation right now. And throughout the week, I've been, taking meetings with clients and venture capital. We're bringing in some fundraising, which is kind of the next phase of where we're going, which is very exciting, very stressful. But she's been incredibly supportive throughout the entire process, which is thankful. I'm very thankful for that.
So when you made the decision to leave, I'm always interested in the financial part. That's kind of by nature. Did you guys? You said you figured out how long you live without much income. Did you have a backup plan? Because I find sometimes people need that to make the leap, but also sometimes that holds you back from fully taking the leap because if this fails, I can get back to there. I mean, I'm sure with the success you had, you could have went back to working for the firms you were at previously.
Yeah, I could, and that did factor into the decision. So I mean, we had a financial fallback plan, which is essentially our retirement savings that we had saved for a long time, and we said, if worse comes to worse, we can dip into that if we absolutely need to, and that's part of a decision to make. But at the same time, just with regard to fallback career-wise, there was a little bit less of a risk because I knew that I could jump back into a position like I was in, a senior business development representative at really any company in the industry or outside of the industry and be successful. And I had people that, that were throughout the process were asking me to join their organization. So it kind of gave me continued confidence that I had a fallback plan.
Right.
But the funny thing that happened was the more I got into it and the more I started to be entrepreneurial and kind of be able to steer my own ship and guide the success of my company, the less that concept became something that I thought was realistic for me.
Right.
I can't now. I can't envision myself going back to that life, going back to,
Yeah, I'm the same way. So even when I had a typical 9 to 5 job, like I always said, like work gets in the way of what I'm trying to do. But now that I have my own business, my goals in work are aligned. Like you said, you're on vacation. I can leave and go be somewhere with my family. If my kids have something going on, if I want to go play golf, I can. Obviously, I need to get the work done. I had a professor in college who said an entrepreneur is someone that'll work 100 hours a week to avoid working 40. And I think that's really true because I'll gladly work 100 hours a week when I want, how I want, where I want, versus I'm going to the office, I'm stuck here from 9 to 5, probably later because the demands of the office are different now than they were years ago. But you really control your own destiny. That was the other thing I didn't like about working with people is no matter how well I did, there's an income cap. Now, as a business,
yes,
even though I have people on my team, ultimately my success is determined by me. If somebody on my team fails, that's my failure because I didn't train them well, I didn't teach them well, I didn't lead them properly. So I can't see ever going back to working for somebody else. Just the flexibility you have as an entrepreneur at times. I mean, granted, I do taxes, so during tax season, my family doesn't see me for 2 months almost.
yeah.
We're working on ways to improve that, and I can work from home if I need to. We got an office, but yeah, I think.
But
Good.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, I think there is this, it's a totally different type of flexibility, right? Where you're driven, you have the flexibility to do the things that you want. You can go golfing and you can go on a family vacation. But at the same time, you ultimately know that if you are not doing the thing that you need to do to make your company successful, that number one, it falls back on you and you only.
Right.
Um, and then you're just hurting yourself in the future.
Yeah.
And so I feel like anybody, that is going to start a company and is going to be an entrepreneur is goal driven. They've got some ideal goal that they want to meet, whether it's a personal goal, a professional goal, whatever it is, a career goal, that the
Left out
reason that they just,
because I tell everybody if you're starting a business to make money, that's not a good reason. It will come if you have the right reason, but financial is not a good reason. So sorry to interrupt, but
right.
I wanted to point that
No,
out.
yeah. No, I agree. I mean, if the only thing you're worried about is the money, it's not going to work out. I mean, it goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning. I mean, if you go into an industry to make money and not solve a problem, then you're not going to make the money because there's nothing that you're solving a problem for. And it doesn't have to be necessarily just solving a problem. The problem has to exist in order for your business to be successful. But if you're focused only on making the money that comes from the business, you're going to lose sight on what makes the business successful, which then ultimately makes the money.
Right. So when you
Totally agree.
started Lango, were you still working for some of this other company, or did you just make a clean cut? Because I imagine for you, generally, I recommend people work in the business they're starting before they started. But for you, there might have been a conflict of interest there. So I'm curious on how you handled that.
Yeah. So I was, when I agreed to work with Josh. So first off, when I was creating my own business concept and my business model, that was while I was working at my last company at We Localize, and it was something I was just kind of doing on the back end, and I was drawing up a framework and just kind of writing a plan. So there wasn't any real like business happening. I wasn't working with clients or anything along those lines. Um, when I agreed to work with Josh and we kind of started putting the plans together, I would say last week or so, I was at my organization. We were talking about these things and kind of transitioning. But there wasn't a lot of overlap. And to your point, it was because I wanted to be very cognizant about conflict and I wanted to be very respectful to my last company, which helped to make me successful. And so, you know, and again, what we're saying about what we're actually doing is building bridges and connecting the industry. I wanted to be very careful about not burning any bridges and not leaving anybody over there high and dry, because ultimately I want them to be successful with or without me. Because I think that the whether they're a customer of Lango at some point or not, or they're in the ecosystem or a platform at some point, the overall success of the language industry is going to further propel the success of Lango. And so I was very deliberate about that transition process.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear because knowing you, I know even if you were going to be completely competing with them, you wouldn't have stayed and built a business while you were still there. But I think it is important to note that there are some complicated ethical issues that come up sometimes when starting a business within the same sphere that you're already in. So just I was
Yeah,
curious to see how you navigated that. And like you said, you were a complementary service to them now. So you weren't competing with them, but it was a nuance that needed to be handled.
yeah, it does. And I think though, even if you are, getting into a competing industry, it doesn't have to be our competing company in the same industry. I don't think it has to be something where it creates this negative tension. I think that there's an opportunity for positive tension in those types of situations, wherein you can better each other through that competition, especially if you contain or continue to maintain the relationships with the people that you used to work with. And kind of to what I was saying, you kind of rise the entire industry to a new level.
Right.
And if you're not willing to compete at the next level, then you probably shouldn't move into being an entrepreneur or starting your own business, because that's what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing people don't really see is the work that goes into it. I tell my clients all the time, I said, now that you started a business, everybody thinks you're rich. And there may
Right.
be a ton of money coming into this business. Maybe there's $10 million coming into your business, but they don't see that 9,999,000 is going out the door to staff, to vendors, to what have you. So I
Yeah.
think it's important that people understand up front the work that goes into a business. It's not just you
Yeah.
hang a shingle and now you have $100,000 sitting in your bank account. So, what were some of the struggles that you guys ran into when you started growing the business? Obviously,
Yeah.
it's been what 18, almost 2 years now, 18 months, almost 2 years since you started the
Yeah.
business. So you're not out of
Hmm.
that first 3 year woods yet, which is one of the first major milestones. So, what are some of the things you've overcome, and maybe some of the struggles you're still having?
Yeah. You're right. There are a lot of challenges in those early stages. Yeah, I will say Josh technically started the business before I got there, and so he was a little bit ahead. And from a technology perspective, he had a lot of learnings that he got or gained throughout the process. So I was fortunate in that I could take advantage of some of those things,
Yeah,
um,
you skipped
and
step
didn't have
one.
to necessarily go through them exactly. Um, but that being said, I mean, the business didn't really become a complete concept until around the time that I started, and so
Yeah,
a lot of those challenges continue today. And it's scaling, it's the growth, and we didn't have the growth when I joined, and that was my role. Luckily, Josh had kind of worked out some of the bugs from the technology side, and now the challenge focused on growth. And so a lot of our problems were around how do we scale? And
hmm
it's like I was saying before, we would sell something and we'd get a project come in, and we'd start building up our buyer side. And then it became, how do we fulfill this order? How do we make sure that we've got the suppliers that we need to take care of the work?
right,
And it was a good problem to have, because through building up a supplier network to handle the buyer's needs, that fits our model. That's exactly what our
right.
model is.
Yeah,
um, and so it was a challenge, because now we have there's a cash flow conversion cycle, which is vast, right? So
right,
we sell something today, and say it's $100,000. We have to pay vendors, and we have to pay internally to get work done,
right,
and we might not see the money come into us for 90 days or
right.
or longer in some cases. And so we have to figure out how to cover that conversion cycle
hmm
um, without money. And I mean, we have some pre-seed money that we kind of, there was a friends and family round, and we raised a little bit of money earlier to help cover some of the costs. But the scaling is a challenge,
Yeah,
um, because these vendors want to get paid shorter than we're getting paid, and so we've got to
right,
figure out ways to finesse that relationship. Because at the same time, in no way do we want to burn or fracture any relationships. The goal is to build the relationships,
right,
because those suppliers, those vendors that are providing the solution, are eventually going to be clients of ours as well on the platform, and are now starting to become clients of ours. That
yeah,
actually creates our pipeline. So it's a very careful balance, and a lot of it comes down to finessing the discussion, working through finding what motivates and what's important to the vendors,
right,
and convincing them um, to to take a little bit longer, to allow us a little bit more time, and showing them, though, that we're worth it, and then
yeah,
paying them when we as soon as we can, and then bringing them more work. And so it becomes sort of a virtuous cycle. The more that they're able to flex with us, the more that they can benefit from that. And then we bring that to the buyers and to the customers. So it's, I mean, that's one of the bigger challenges. And then it really is now we're at our challenge is growth. We figured out our overall business model. We figured out our sales engine. We figured out where our operational supply chain comes from and how to get it. And now it's about how can we grow at scale, and how can we grow rapidly? Because we want to be, this kind of ties into what you were saying before about the money. We're not ignoring the money. In no way do we want to not make money. Our goal is to make a lot of money. Our goal is to be a massively successful company in the industry that drives, millions or billions of dollars of revenue. And we want to get there fast. And so we've essentially worked out these bugs and we've figured out the little kinks in the process. And now we're ready to kind of, we just need the gas to fuel the engine to get there. And that's our biggest challenge now is that's what we're fundraising. We're going out, we're talking to venture capital, we're talking to our existing investors, and we're raising some capital to accelerate that. And then we want to raise a large funding round that will enable us to grow at, venture scale.
Yeah.
And that's our challenge at the moment.
So how did you manage those relationships? Because I think a lot of people don't realize, like, vendor management is another form of sales, essentially, especially as a new business, because you have no leverage in this situation, right? Like you're this small player. You know where you're going to be at some point, but you're not quite there yet. So you don't have the leverage.
Yeah.
You have to sell them on your vision to get them to agree to terms. So what were some of the things that you had to do to kind of get those favorable terms?
So basically, we would say, if you give us flexibility with these payment terms, or if you can do this at a discount, we'll bring you more volume. And it was following through on those promises, and some of those promises fell on me to then go bring in more business to bring to those vendors. So it's it's a lot of follow through. So one of the other ways that we're working with these vendors is, I'm incredibly fortunate to have somebody that I brought onto our team, Sarah Dunham. She worked with me at We Localize, and she is an industry veteran. So I guess it goes back to your question. She's the person. We talked about specialization. She's highly specialized in operation, project management, and vendor management.
Okay.
And so she has existing relationships, and she also knows how to talk to our suppliers and our vendors in just the right way, to reassure them that they're making a good choice in working with us and being flexible with us. And it's been tremendously helpful, because not only that, it's helped to bring our costs down a bit, leveraging volume that is there and volume that is to come. Leveraging, there are some tools that we use in the process on our side, but that also she's helping to implement with the vendors that reduce overall cost and create efficiency. And it's been really valuable, because that's helped us to scale faster, without having to have the capital yet. And so it really is. I mean, you have to work with both sides, and you have to sell to both sides, the customer, of course, and then the supplier, to help them see your vision. And what's been great is Sarah's been instrumental in that, leveraging the relationships that she has, and just her understanding of the needs of the vendors, and kind of goes back to something we said earlier, where it's you have to focus on providing a solution and focusing on the needs, and not just on making the money. The more we focus on what the vendors need, the more we're able to talk to them in terms of what's important to them. The more that we focus on what the buyer needs, the more we're able to talk to them in terms of what's important to them, and then we bring it together. And so but it's certainly a challenge. It's not easy. It requires a lot of favor asking. you
Right.
know, a lot of kind of making promises and then holding your own feet to the fire to follow through on those promises.
Yeah.
Um, so, but which I think, again, all of those things make you better.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, but there's no stress in a situation like the way a muscle grows is you stress it out so much that it tears, and then when it builds back up, it gets better. So if you're not putting yourself in stress, getting outside of your comfort zone, then there is no growth there. So,
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think that's a perfect analogy.
so I guess the last thing I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for somebody starting a business to help them be successful, or what expectations should they have? Just generally, any kind of a wide open question for a business owner or potential business owner, even.
You know, I think a key element is it's very personal. You have to know yourself.
Yeah,
Um, I think having guiding principles is crucial, because you can have a passion for something that you're doing, and you can have an expertise or a know-how, but it's those principles that kind of that create the posts on which, or the frame on which everything else is built, that
yeah,
have to be completely solid. um, and it's knowing what those principles are for you, and they can shift, and they can kind of, you can add some, and you can remove some as you refine over time.
hmm,
But I think having a few key things that are essentially unwaverable, that you stand by, that guide what you do, will
yeah,
help to ensure the confidence in what you're doing, but also ensure your success. Um, and so, you know, I'm happy to, I have five guiding principles, that I try to live by, and I would by no means put these on others to adopt the same ones. But I think uh, having something like this to start with, and then bringing your own in, is key. And so for me, it's doing the right thing, doing things the right way, work as hard as I possibly can, never give up, and then respect everybody. I think when I'm making hard decisions, I try to bring in each of those five different elements and five different principles, and use them to help me make that decision based on those five. And sometimes they're not always in complete alignment. There can be some
right,
conflict,
yeah,
um, but it's relying on your own internal understanding of who you are within those principles that I think ultimately makes those decisions, helps you to make those decisions.
yeah. I think that's awesome, because another thing I think that helps with is not only decision making, um, but also hiring. So it's going to allow you to make good decisions when you hire, and hire people that really fit those principles as well. So it gets you, as you grow, if you hire for skill, you lose the culture. So you need skill,
Right.
obviously, but a lot of times you can teach that skill. And we've had some other leadership experts on the podcast. But really, hiring for culture, fit, and value alignment is incredibly important, because that's how, as you get bigger, you don't get that big company feel. Like even you said, you had some challenges at big companies. I'm not sure if it was a culture fit, or it sounds more like it was kind of red tape. But if that's
Yeah.
an important thing to you, and you hire people that are good, that also don't like red tape, your firm is less likely to have red tape. So having that core set of values that you can rattle off in an interview and bring the right people on when you're making a tough decision, falling back on those core values is really what solidifies the company, in the
Yeah.
path that it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's an excellent point, right? I mean, because I think the hiring is key. You know, at these past organizations, I think that there were some good principles and good values that the companies had, but that weren't always executed on, or shared by all of the employees of that company, and that
Right.
makes it a lot more challenging for the company itself to work and live within those values.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you making some time while you're on vacation today. I know you got to get to
Of
the
course.
beach, so I hope you don't get too sunburnt, and hope you enjoy the rest of your vacation and are able to enjoy it, even though you're doing some work. And again, thank you for joining us today. I loved having the conversation with you.
Of course, yeah, I enjoyed it. Dave goes. I prefer this than a bathtub. So
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk via, some electric with some distance between us,
So if we do
rather
it again, you
than
don't want to do
just
it in the bathtub?
it would make it interesting for sure. But I'm open for anything.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
All right,
I
thanks
enjoyed it.
again, Dave.
Sure.